There are no right-wing movies. There is no right-wing media. There are no right-wing protests. There is no right-wing activism. You guys stand for fucking nothing. On top of that, most right-wingers are fans of leftist media. They're just so illiterate that they can't understand how it's leftist. They don't realize that the US is the evil empire in Star Wars, and Star Wars is based on Vietnam, or that Hunger Games was inspired by the US. The entire foundation of right-wing politics is hate. There is no improvement. There is no future. There is no better plan for everybody. There is subjugation and problems. They don't talk about things they want to improve and then derive solutions from that. They blame current problems on random things. Immigrants are stealing our jobs. Deport everybody. Like, there's absolutely zero critical analysis of the issues of our society and why we have them. Instead, there's a childish game of blaming, ostracizing, dehumanizing not only their political enemies, but whatever new scapegoat that they've picked for this decade. It's so clear to everybody who is not a right-winger that the only point of being a right-winger is to preserve your own self-interest in your own small privileged bubble of reality. You are not concerned with the affairs of the world or of other people or of people who have it harder. That's why Make America Great Again is racist. When was America great for women? When was America great for black people? Like, these people literally couldn't fucking vote 70 years ago. And honestly, that's a whole different topic. So I'm just gonna make a part 2 with about MAGA and why MAGA is just so problematic. Just the act.
Germany just declared its second most popular political party a confirmed right-wing extremist organization. And I'm going to explain it to you as if it happened in the United States. Imagine if MAGA was its own separate political party apart from the Republican Party, and the FBI released a report saying, "We've been investigating MAGA as a political party, and we've concluded that we're moving them from the yellow list to the red list. They're not just a suspected, but a confirmed right-wing extremist organization. The political party has acted against human dignity, the principles of democracy, and the rule of law." Essentially be like them saying that MAGA promotes ethically exclusive ideology, excludes people with a migrant background, even if they're born in the country, from being considered a true American, and has a worldview that is fundamentally misaligned with democratic principles. And because of that, the FBI now would have the full legal authority to effectively spy on the party. They can track their communications, place informants in their meetings, and monitor internal operations. It's all public. Everyone knows, and everyone's talking about whether or not they should ban the party altogether, eventually moving them to a blacklist. But here's where I break away from the comparison, because while the closest thing we have in the US is probably the FBI, we don't have anything exactly like Germany's Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution. There's no agency whose job it is to publicly monitor threats to democracy from within, especially not elected ones like there is in Germany. If we wanted something like this, the USA would need a nonpartisan agency with a constitutional mandate to defend democracy itself, not just fight crime or terrorism. That would mean new legislation, clear legal definitions of anti-democratic activity, and probably a major cultural shift on what it means for free speech and democracy. Germany just did it.
3 neo-Nazis have been jailed for plotting terror attacks on mosques and synagogues. Brogan Stewart, Christopher Ringrose and Marco Pizzetto discussed their plans in a group chat, idolising the Nazi Party and glorifying the mass murders of Jews and Muslims. The trio hoarded over 200 weapons, including machetes, swords and crossbows, to prepare for what they believed was an inevitable race war. Ringrose even used a 3D printer to create an almost complete assault rifle. The court heard that if an undercover officer hadn't caught the group sooner, the gun would have killed somebody. Now they'll be behind bars for a total of 29 years.
I just got my hands on leaked audio from the far-right extremist group Diagolon's event held in the outskirts of Ottawa. And some of the stuff they're telling their supporters on the self-described terror tour is pretty interesting. And I'm not just talking about the fact that they charged $60 per ticket and people had to listen to a super cringe poetry reading.
Children's life is marked by torment, sorrow, and strife.
Here's what I heard in the audio, which was shared with me by an attendee who gave me permission to use it. First off, the event was held at the Carp Agricultural Hall on July 6th, and the audio is a little bit muffled. One of the more uncomfortable moments was when they had the entire crowd chant, "They have to go back."
They have to go back. 1, 2, 3.
which is a phrase Diagolon often uses in the context of anti-immigrant posts. And between jokes about baking 6 million cookies, which was met with raucous laughter and sure seemed like it could have been dog whistling something really awful.
Probably bake 6 million cookies up here right now.
And very racist accents. They also said some really serious stuff. Like when Alex Friend, aka the Ferryman's Toll, who has been associating with white nationalist groups and has platformed neo-Nazis on his podcast, told his audience he is, quote, tired of being against the government and against transgenderism and against immigration. Instead, he says, people want to be pro something. Take a listen.
I think a lot of people feel that need. They want to be pro something. They want to take pride in their culture. They want to be proud of their history. They want to be proud of their people.
He then went on to add this.
They've demonized and turned into a dirty word, the N-word for white people, pretty much, is nationalism and nationalists.
So if you're talking about that in the context of white people, as you said, do you mean white nationalism and white nationalists?
Until we start being pro our people, pro our culture, and pro our country, none of this is going to change.
These guys often claim to just be memeing and joking around, but I'll leave it up to you to decide how serious that clip was and what message these guys are bringing to their crowds across the country. That is when they aren't too busy talking about me.
Rachel's outside. Did we see her? She okay? Did we see Rachel?
Now that's what I call fan behavior. What do you think of all this?
Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's amazing having you here. My name is Anthony, and today we'll be covering the spread of right-wing extremism in Europe. So thank you everyone who watches my videos, and I ensure that you comment and let's engage in dialogue. Because I have been receiving hateful MAGA comments in my YouTube channel of late. But still, continue the discussions, open mind. So let's continue discussing. Let's get each other's people perspective, so we can build a healthy political relationships. There's right-wing extremism really spreading in Europe.
What's up everyone, let's talk about how the right-wing press in the UK is leading an attack against lawyers who are protesting against the climate crisis. Hi, my name is Rachel Donald, I'm a climate corruption journalist. I'm reporting to you from a rainy Zurich, where I was just presenting to the Technical University how to make sense of the crisis. More than 120 lawyers in the UK have signed a declaration for conscience, saying they will not work for fossil fuel expansion and they will not prosecute climate activists. The group called Lawyers Are Responsible has sent out a press release earlier in the week. This press release was under embargo, which means that nobody was allowed to print it until the Daily Mail broke that embargo to run a front page attack on the group at midnight, slamming them as woke. Very original, Daily Mail. Now, the lawyers wrote that declaration in light of the recent IPCC report, which summarized the past 7 years of work, which was a quote-unquote final warning to humanity, saying that we are on the road to climate destruction if we do not change our ways now. The Daily Mail completely ignored the IPCC report on the day, relegating it to page 19 of the paper, whilst also managing to sneak in an editorial warning against climate hysteria. But now that lawyers in the UK are taking action because of the IPCC report, the Daily Mail has gone full goblin propaganda mode, saying the law of the UK is at stake. They even managed to slip in a quote from Tory MP Robert Buckland, who confusedly managed to compare the fossil fuel industry to rapists and paedophiles when he was saying that everyone deserves a fair trial. Let's remember, he's talking about the fossil fuel industry, the same industry which misled the public for over 40 years about the damage that they were doing to the climate, because their model showed that global warming would push us over the tipping point and humanity into destruction. Yeah, they deserve a fair trial. What about everybody else that's suffering because of their propaganda and lies? Do we deserve a fair trial? Anyway, the Telegraph also ran the story around midnight after the Daily Mail broke the embargo, and they too completely ignored the IPCC report, the final warning, the catastrophic messages from the most senior international agency in the world. No, instead they decided to decry climate action by using a poll of just 3,000 people, saying that climate action will actually make us poorer and colder. This is the state of the press in the UK. Our institutions are completely decaying. Let's not forget our courts. 2 members of Insulate Britain were brought to trial for their recent act of civil disobedience, and the judge ruled that they were not allowed to talk about their motivations during the trial, i.e. they were not allowed to tell the jury that it was because of the climate crisis. Obviously, these protesters then did, and the judge then threw them into jail for contempt of court. I mean, what world do we live in? The United Nations Agency releases reports saying that we are on the brink of total irreversible destruction, and at the same time we've got judges saying that you're not allowed to talk about that in court if you're protesting against the climate crisis, and throwing people into jail who are trying to warn their fellow citizens of that information, of that science. There's lots of reasons as to why the powerful get away with stuff like this, but a big one is the collusion between the press and their elite pals. Go and read my report on Byline Times for the
audacity for an American to comment that's not how you deal with an extremist Islamic regime that talks about wiping another country off the map, when we are an extremist Christian regime that routinely talks about wiping other countries off the map and actively engages in doing so, is wild. Because just yesterday, a US senator said that because of his Christian faith, he supports the bombing of other nations. We had a woman who was on life support for weeks so that we could harvest her fetus. Just last week, a Christian pastor shot 4 people and 2 state legislators because of their support of women's health care. We have healthcare facilities that are being targeted and bombed by Christian extremists. The U.S. Imperial Project has bases throughout the world in order to impact regime changes in other countries. To call other countries extremist Islamic regimes while ignoring the reality of U.S. imperialism across the world, creating violence and instability, is absolutely wild. We have U.S. senators who are actively talking about wiping other countries off the map and regime change. And to be so ignorant that you completely ignore the reality of extremist Christian regimes in our country, but claim that other extremist Islamic regimes need to be wiped out of the map, is just absolutely wild and so ignorant of the reality.
I've seen a lot of news about how local Europeans are mad that tourists are just ruining their cities, and they're complaining and they're squirting the water. You guys just have to accept at this point that you're our Disney World now. That's your function in this world. All your economies have stagnated. You don't produce anything besides the prostitution of your own history and cured meats. That's what you have to offer the global economy. Just riding off of the fumes of the luxury goods and culture you created centuries ago, and that's really all you have. China is making solar panels and you make manchego. What do you think is going to happen here? Look on the bright side. Okay, you had your fun, colonizing the world, pillaging and extracting wealth to make your nice little piazzas and palaces. And so now you have to accept that you're just museum cities. You're a museum as a city, and all the natives are little mannequins that we can look at and poke. And they say, oh, would you like mustard with that? That's it. You're animatrons. And so when the tourists come to your country, you should say, thank you, merci, thank you so much for coming and visiting our poor little playground, because that's what you are. You're our playground. And if you also want to have your nice little pensions and your health care while taking off 9 months a year and retiring at 42, then you should just accept that you're a living, breathing, it's a small world ride. That's what you are, and that's the trade-off. That you get to retire at 12 years old, and you're not a real country.
So my problem with right-wing individuals or politicians or everyone in general who is right-wing, their politics is solely based on blame game, us versus them. For me to gain, you have to lose. That's the essence, that's generally the principle of right-wing politics, right? Maybe tell me in the comment sections. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me in the comment section.
The Europeans are not going to like this one, but the answer is no. I don't really see myself living in Europe anymore. And when I do, there are only a few countries that I would consider. The majority of them are in the Balkans or in the UK. But having lived in 3 European countries and traveled all around Europe multiple times, the biggest reason why I am not interested in Europe anymore has to do with the European attitude and the social culture that exists in a lot of European countries. I'm gonna come out and say it, but Western Europe, the area that people overwhelmingly romanticize, is actually the least desirable place in Europe for me to live. I went to go live in Palestine from 2020 to 2021, and the reason why living there changed my life is because I realized that it actually matters that I live around friendly people. It matters that I am given respect when I go out on the street minding my business, and that the people who are around me are happy and welcoming and accommodating people. I find that there is a serious lack of respect in a lot of European societies, and it's not just for foreigners, it's for each other as well. When I tell you guys the amount of negative experiences I've had with strangers in my life, every single one of them was in Europe. I think that there are a lot of miserable people. The majority of European societies are very individualistic and not communal at all. And you can see it in how people are competing with one another, how people treat one another, and how people treat foreigners and people who don't look like them. The few times I felt like I was living in a country that was overwhelmingly happy and welcoming was when I lived in Croatia for a couple of months, or when I went to Greece. But the allure in other European societies, particularly in the West, as I stated, does not exist for me. The arrogance is crazy. People are condescending to you. Even if you speak their language, people are incredibly fucking rude. And the normalization of racism, but the denial of it, is unbearable. I think that because Americans over-romanticize Europe, a lot of Europeans internalize this idea that they're the most modern and advanced continent on the planet, when they clearly aren't regarding things like technology and infrastructure. And I just believe that Americans contribute to this overinflated European ego that also tends to feed their racism and thinking they're better than everybody else, especially if you're a person of color. They also use immigrants as a crutch and scapegoat for everything that's wrong with their countries and societies, and refuse to acknowledge the problematic nature and history of a lot of their countries. There is a reason why so many people have issues making friends in Europe. Of course, I'm not one of them because a lot of my friends were first or second generation. But after living in Western Europe particularly, the desire to be in Europe long term largely cleared for me. And the reason why I ended up living in Hungary was because my ex-partner was from there. And even though Hungary has to be one of the most fucked up countries in the world, I still found the sociability in this country a lot better than what I experienced in Western Europe. And still doesn't even come close to what I experienced when I was living in Palestine or from people in the Caribbean, Latin America, and South America. I need people to be nice and friendly at minimum. And so right now, no. I would move to Europe if I was guaranteed to make more money there than I do right now in the States. And that's just it. But long term, I'm not looking towards Europe.
When I posted that video that was like, oh yeah, well, like here's some books that you should read if you want to disappoint your conservative family, I meant that in like a funny way, but now I mean that in like a serious way. I guess I post this because I don't think I'm the only person that this is happening to, where like watching people that you love get more and more red pilled to the point where it is like it's scary. If it weren't so deeply personal, like I would find it so interesting from a mental health perspective, because it's like watching this groupthink happen the way that it is, and watching how it like disinformation just unhinges people from reality. Like, I know that I'm not the only person who has parents who they just like slowly lose year by year. Like, I'm watching my father get more and more extreme to the point that I don't know him. There's so many well-meaning comments on my last video talking about conservative parents, with like people saying like, yeah, never give up. Like, you know, I bring my dad to drag brunch now, and like those things are great. And I know people don't mean anything by them, but it's like that, I don't think that will ever be a reality for me, especially like with where my dad is, and like I have to think about the lines that I need to draw myself about whether or not, like, what's his access to me like. I have to hear a man who used to be relatively normal, definitely very right-leaning, but not like completely incoherent, and now he's looking me in the eyes and telling me like he's willing to like bear arms against his brothers in a civil war, and I'm like, I don't know how to have a conversation with that. And it's just like there's no rational conversation. Like there's nothing I can say that will convince him, and it's like, all right, well great, then I'll make my lines in the sand of we don't talk about these things, and then what? Don't know what level of brainwashing has to happen for you to like see your child and say like enemy of the state. Like that's a real unironic thought. And it pisses me off, frankly. Like I've read books recently on disinformation, and so like being a little bit more aware of it and watching the way that that generation tends to fall for these things is beyond me. Like the things that I have to argue of, like, what you're saying is not a fact. You're saying something as if it's a fact and it's not a fact. And keep in mind too, I'm a literal mental health professional, but it is like a blind spot. It's like my own family, right? So that's part of it. But there's all these like lines that I don't think any of us know how to toe, where it's like when you have somebody who's in a cult, like you want to maintain that positive contact and make sure that they don't get isolated. But then also if you're dealing with someone who tends to be narcissistic, you're also trying to like really draw consequences and boundaries and lines. And so it's like which one? I'm interested about when this gets studied later on, you know, in textbooks of like what's happening to the, you know, white American psyche, maybe. I don't know if that's even a good way to put it, of like what watching people as this like mass level of groupthink that is so alarming and so scary.
I just saw a video of this Dominican lady saying how Dominicans want to be white so bad, but when they go to Spain, they get treated like poop. And I have so much to say about that. So about 2 years ago, me and my sister wanted to go live our Cheetah Girls moment, and we took a flight from Dallas to Madrid, Spain. Let me tell you how Spain will never ever see my face again. Never see my motherfucking face again. First of all, those people are so racist. Racista. Okay? They are so racist. And on top of that, I'm a plus size girly. So not only are they racist, but they're fat phobic. So when you see people saying, oh yeah, I went to Spain and I went to Madrid, you need to really consider the person saying this to you and how it correlates with you. I went to Madrid and American Airlines left my luggage in Dallas. So I ain't had no clothes. When we got to Madrid, we were close to the city center. So we decided, boom, we're going to walk to the city center so Chris could get her an outfit or two until my clothes gets here. I walked into H&M. These people were like, looked at me as if, girl, why are you here? Why are you here? Why did you come bother us like this? Here in Madrid. I was treated poorly. We went to so many different restaurants. And honestly, now that I think about it, I barely posted any videos or pictures. It wasn't until the other day that I was at work showing my coworker my travel, like the time that I was out here just not catching feelings, but flights. And I was showing her these pictures. And she's like, oh my gosh, Christelle, you've traveled a bit. And I was like, yes, girl. And then I remembered how shitty these people treated us. We went to restaurants and they would sit us first. We would get served last. Madrid will never. Spain. Well, Madrid. Because Barcelona wasn't like that. Because we did spend a day in Barcelona. Madrid will never, ever see my face or my big black ass again.
Thank you everyone for watching my videos to the end. It's amazing having you here. And what I usually tell my fellow Democrats is let's usually engage these discussions with open mind. First and foremost, you have to understand your opponents. Even in military warfare, you have to understand your opponents. Their tactics, you know, their numbers, their strength. You have to. Their ideologies, their principles, what is making them engage in all of this. Now, let's study right-wing politics and their politicians. And I want to give a detailed analysis. There was this protest in Australia the other day. You saw them, huh? There are protests in Britain, the other country, Tommy Robinson, right? You saw the protest, right? They were all televised, right? You saw this protest, the rise of the rise in publicity of AFD. This is a German party. There is a rise of right-wing politics in Netherlands, right? There is a rise of right-wing politics in Poland, Hungary. And what is their main political point? Even in the United States, what's their main political point? Tell me in the comment section, because maybe I might be wrong. Their main political point is immigration. It's immigration. Now, for Democrats who are my fans or who watch my videos, you'll have to forgive me for this one video because I'll be making statements which you won't like. Why? Because I want to make arguments based on research on facts. Here comes the drama. What led to immigration in Western countries is because Western population couldn't give birth at a rate which the corporates wanted. Why? The high cost of living. And the same is happening even to immigrants who are coming to the United States. They cannot give birth at a rate similar to countries where they come from, where corporate greed hasn't taken hold, where the cost of living is low, where patriarchy still exists. You understand me, eh? One of the reasons why immigration came is that so that corporations can have cheap labor. There was no referendum for you to be asked if you want people to come to your country. There was no public discussion about the issue. No, just people coming to your country, they are being allowed by the government. Now, what made the cost of living skyrocket in Western countries? First, healthcare was expensive, housing was expensive, buying servicing a car was expensive, student loans were taking you down, and still the wage was poor, right? Even after immigrants came to your country, the government couldn't resolve this problem. But they have to keep you distracted. What will they do? They start reprogramming you again that these immigrants are taking your healthcare, these immigrants are taking your jobs, these immigrants are having your women, these immigrants are the problem we have in our country. So as these uneducated masses who are doing by these right-wing politicians focused on the immigrants, the corporates are still making their lives miserable. You understand me? The problem we have in this world is corporates. It's the only problem we have. Their love for profits, their love for cheap labor, their greed. Every time you want to buy the biggest yacht, every time you have to buy the best car, you want the next $1 billion, you want the next. Now, this brings problem even to us, the common citizens, who have nothing to do with all of this. Because we didn't bring the immigrants, we didn't assimilate them, right? What made the immigrants come to our country is because of cheap labor from the corporates. So the problem we have with this in the Western civilization, and what right-wing politicians and individuals don't want to accept, is that the corporates are directing the policy of the government. That's the only problem we have. In the past, immigrants could come from Italy, Scotland, name any country, Mexico, Cuba, come to the United States, start a business thrives, they pass on. But now, an immigrant can never come from another country and come to the United States and start a business and it thrives, or Europe or anywhere, because what? The corporates have taken over all the businesses. The government is killing small businesses. Now, the immigrants who come, they come for the labor, for the jobs. And now, to make matters worse, the government starts spreading hate towards these immigrants, that they are the problem. When the real problem is the government who don't have solution about the problems we are having, and the corporates for their love of cheap labor. So what I usually say, talk blue, listen blue, vote blue, and until the next video, thank you for your attention to this matter.